The string of fairy lights overhead shimmers, casting a warm, deceptive glow on the smiling faces. The air smells of expensive perfume, celebratory champagne, and the cloying sweetness of buttercream frosting waiting on a tiered cake. I hold my glass, my knuckles white, the condensation cold against my palm. My sister, radiant in a simple cream dress, laughs beside her fiancé, his arm a secure anchor around her waist. And then, my mother's voice, sharp as broken glass in the festive air, slices through the gentle hum of conversation. It's not loud, not a shout, but it carries with a chilling precision, meant for me, meant to land, meant to wound. "Well," she says, her eyes sweeping over the happy couple, then lingering on me, a slow, dismissive dissent. "At least one of my daughters isn't a failure." The smile stays plastered on her face, wide and brittle, a mask carved from ice. But her eyes are colder than any winter. They hold a history of disappointment, a relentless narrative she has woven about me since I was a child, a story whispered in my ear, shouted across rooms, implied in every comparison she has ever made. The laughter around us continues for a beat, then falters, a ripple of awkward silence spreading outwards from the epicenter of her cruelty. My sister's smile tightens, a brief flicker of discomfort, before she turns back to her fiancé, seemingly oblivious, or perhaps practiced at ignoring the casual brutality. His expression is unreadable, polite, maybe a hint of confusion. My own face. I don't know what my face is doing. I feel it crack just a little like thin ice under pressure. The room, moments ago warm and inviting, suddenly feels frigid, vast. The clinking of glasses sounds like distant chimes at a funeral. The smell of celebration turns sour in my throat. I can feel the weight of every eye that happened to catch the tail end of her comment, every person who heard, who understands the dynamic, who has watched this performance play out for years. They pretend not to look, but I can feel the heat of their peripheral gazes, the awkward sympathy, the silent judgment. It's always been this way. A subtle jab disguised as concern, a backhanded compliment delivered with a smile, a public declaration of my supposed shortcomings while celebrating my sister's perceived successes. It's her masterpiece, this slow, deliberate dismantling of my self-worth, piece by painstaking piece. She doesn't need a hammer. Her words are surgical steel. The phrase echoes in the sudden quiet around me. Not a failure. The implication hanging heavy in the air, thick as the perfume, is that I am the failure. I am the disappointment. Standing here at my sister's engagement party, surrounded by people who are here to celebrate a beginning, my mother reminds everyone and me that I represent an ending, a dead-end street, a life that didn't live up to expectations. Her expectations. A knot tightens in my chest, suffocating. It's a familiar feeling, an old friend wrapped in barbed wire, settling in right below my sternum. The urge to shrink, to disappear, to sink into the polished floorboards until I'm invisible, is overwhelming. My hand trembles slightly as I raise the glass to my lips, taking a slow sip of champagne that tastes like ash. Where are you right now? What time is it listening to this? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It helps me share these stories more than you can imagine. This is the life she has curated for me in her mind. The life of the other daughter. The one who didn't follow the predictable path. The one who took risks, who stumbled, who built something unconventional, something she doesn't understand, something she therefore cannot value. My sister, she became a doctor. She married a man from a good family. She lives in a house with a white picket fence. This is my mother's definition of success. This is what makes her not a failure. Me? I poured my life into building a business from nothing. A business in a field she deems frivolous, insecure, unstable. It was years of ramen noodles, sleepless nights, battling creditors, facing down doubt, my own and hers. Years she watched from a distance, offering unsolicited advice, veiled criticism, and constant comparisons to my sister's steady, predictable ascent. Every struggle I faced, every setback, was proof in her eyes that she was right, that I was on the wrong path, that I was a failure. I remember the early days, the sheer terror of signing the lease on a tiny office space, the knot in my stomach that never seemed to loosen. I'd call her, hoping for a word of encouragement, maybe just a listening ear. Instead, I'd get, "Are you sure about this? It seems so risky. Your sister is finishing her residency now, such a stable career. Have you thought about getting a real job?" Or after a particularly tough month, barely making payroll, "Still playing around with that business of yours? It must be hard not having a steady income like sister's name. Maybe it's time to cut your losses and find something sensible." Her words were never a lifeline, always an anchor, dragging me down. They chipped away at my confidence, forcing me to build walls around my dreams, to pursue them in secret, away from her corrosive gaze. I stopped sharing my triumphs, the small victories that kept me going, because they were never enough for her. They were always overshadowed by my sister's achievements, framed as temporary luck before the inevitable crash. The irony, sharp and bitter, is that the business didn't crash. It soared. Slowly, painstakingly, it grew. It became profitable. More than profitable. It became successful beyond my wildest initial hopes. It demanded everything I had, my time, my energy, my focus. It meant sacrificing a conventional social life, delaying traditional milestones like marriage or children, things my mother values above all else. And because I didn't fit her mold, because my success didn't look like my sister's success, she simply refused to see it. Or perhaps she saw it and it threatened her narrative, the one where she had one successful daughter and one failure. And that narrative, I realize now, was more important to her than my actual well-being or happiness. So I learned to live with the label, the failure. It became a part of her identity for me, something she clung to, something she used to define me, to control me, perhaps even to make herself feel better about something in her own life. I built my empire in the quiet corners of my life, far away from her judging eyes. My home, my friends who understood, my work, these were my sanctuary. Family gatherings, like this engagement party, became minefields I navigated with extreme caution, armed with practiced smiles and neutral responses. Tonight was supposed to be different. It was my sister's night. A night of joy, of looking forward. I thought, just for once, the focus would be entirely on her, and I could simply exist, blend into the background, witness her happiness without being subjected to the usual performance. I even allowed myself a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, seeing me happy for my sister, seeing me well-dressed and present, would soften something in her. That she might, for one evening, see me as just me, not as her designated failure. But the hope was a fragile thing, easily crushed. Her words proved that. At least one daughter isn't a failure. The sentence hangs in the air, a poison mist. I feel my cheeks flush, a hot, angry embarrassment spreading through me. It's not just the words, it's the public nature of it, the casual cruelty delivered with a hostess's smile, the perfect performance of a mother gently mourning her child's wasted life. I manage a small, tight smile, raising my glass a fraction higher. To Sarah and Mark, I say, my voice a little strained, maybe a little too loud, aiming it towards my sister and her fiancé, trying to deflect the heat. My sister beams, genuinely happy, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Thanks, sis," she says, squeezing Mark's hand. Mark smiles at me, a polite, friendly smile. He seems like a good man. Kind eyes, steady demeanor. He's a lawyer, another point of pride for my mother. Another box ticked on the successful checklist. I try not to resent him, or Sarah, for fitting the mold so perfectly, for providing my mother with the validation she constantly seeks. It's not their fault she uses their lives as a weapon against mine. The party continues, a blur of forced conversations and plastered smiles. I circulate, offering congratulations, making small talk, all the while feeling the sting of my mother's words like a wasp trapped beneath my skin. Every polite inquiry about my life feels like an interrogation. How is that business of yours doing? People ask, their tone ranging from genuinely curious to thinly veiled skepticism. I give vague, positive answers, refusing to offer her or anyone any ammunition. My mother, meanwhile, is in her element, holding court, accepting congratulations, beaming like the sun. She introduces Sarah and Mark to various relatives and friends, always adding little details about their accomplishments, subtly highlighting the contrast with my own path. Sarah, our doctor, and Mark, the brilliant lawyer, they'll do so well together. Such a solid future. The unspoken coda, aimed squarely at me, is clear. Unlike some people. I retreat to a quieter corner near the patio doors, watching the scene unfold. My sister is laughing, her head thrown back. Mark is watching her, a look of pure adoration on his face. For a moment, I allow myself to feel a pang of something else, something softer, genuine happiness for her. She seems happy. She deserves happiness. But then my mother drifts closer, a predatory gleam in her eye. She's had a few glasses of champagne now, and her filter is wearing thin. She leans in, her voice dropping to a stage whisper, though loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. You know, she says, picking at an invisible piece of lint on my sleeve, I just worry about you. Still single, still working those crazy hours, not exactly setting yourself up for a comfortable future, are you? A woman needs security. A good man, a family. Not whatever this is you're doing. My jaw tightens. This is it. The slow, agonizing turn of the knife. She's not just making a public declaration. She's digging in, personalizing the attack. She knows my vulnerabilities, the things I sometimes question late at night when I'm alone. She knows how to hit where it hurts the most. She frames it as concern, but it's pure, unadulterated judgment, laced with the bitter taste of her own unfulfilled expectations. I am comfortable, Mom, I say, keeping my voice even, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. My business is doing well. She waves a dismissive hand. Doing well? Well enough to afford a house. A family? Real stability? Or are we still just scraping by, living hand-to-mouth on some creative whim? The sheer ignorance, the willful blindness, is breathtaking. She has no idea. No concept of the scale of my success. I've kept it private for this very reason. To avoid her commentary, her attempts to diminish it. But hearing her reduce years of blood, sweat, and tears, years of calculated risk and relentless effort, to a mere creative whim, to scraping by, is infuriating. It's like she lives in an alternate reality where my life is a perpetual state of teetering on the edge of financial ruin. And maybe that's easier for her. Maybe admitting I've built something substantial, something successful outside of her narrow definition, would force her to confront her own biases, her own role in making me feel less than for most of my life. It's easier to keep me in the box labeled failure. It fits her narrative. It's more than scraping by, Mom, I say, a hint of steel entering my voice despite my efforts to remain calm. I'm doing just fine. She scoffs, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. Fine isn't success, dear. Fine is adequate. Is that all you aspire to? Adequacy. Adequacy. The word hangs between us, another arrow in her quiver. My chest feels tight, my breath shallow. The urge to scream, to unleash the years of frustration and hurt, is immense. To tell her exactly what adequacy looks like to me. To tell her that building something from nothing, creating jobs, providing value, living life on my own terms, feels a lot more like success than simply following a pre-approved path, regardless of whether it brings genuine happiness. But I bite back the words. What's the point? She wouldn't hear me. She never does. She hears only the echo of her own expectations, amplified by years of repetition. I shift my weight, looking past her towards the main group. The speeches are about to start. I can see Mark's father standing near the impromptu stage area, tapping the microphone. A wave of dread washes over me. The toasts. The part of the evening where everyone gets to stand up and share heartfelt, sometimes embarrassing, stories about the happy couple. It's also the part where my mother will undoubtedly shine, talking about her perfect daughter and her perfect future husband, cementing her narrative for everyone present. I brace myself for the inevitable praise showered upon Sarah and Mark, the implicit comparisons that will surely follow, even if not explicitly stated. The Sarah is so responsible, followed by a significant look in my direction. The Mark is such a good provider, while my mother makes a show of sipping her drink and looking vaguely troubled about my finances. The knot in my stomach tightens further. It's one thing to endure her barbs in private, another to sit through a public affirmation of her beliefs about her daughters, with me present as the living embodiment of her disappointment. I want to leave, to escape the suffocating atmosphere, the weight of her judgment, the performative joy that feels hollow to me right now. But I can't. I'm family. I'm expected to stay, to smile, to witness my own degradation. As the first speaker takes the mic, I position myself near the back, hoping to blend into the crowd. My mother, naturally, is seated prominently at a table near the front, beaming with pride. Sarah and Mark are at the head table, looking happy and a little nervous. The speeches begin. Stories are told. Laughter rings out. Tears are shed. It's all very touching, very conventional. And then it's Mark's turn. He stands up, looking handsome and poised. He clears his throat, smiles out at the crowd, and begins to speak. He talks about meeting Sarah, about falling in love, about their shared dreams. He talks about the future, about building a life together. My mother watches him, her smile unwavering, her eyes shining with approval. This is her moment too, seeing her daughter's life neatly falling into place, a testament to her mothering, to her values. And then he pauses. His gaze sweeps across the room, landing on different faces, friends, family, people who have supported them. And then his eyes find mine. He holds my gaze for a moment, and a different kind of look enters his eyes, not just polite recognition, but something deeper, warmer, filled with genuine gratitude. My heart gives a strange lurch. Why is he looking at me like that? He clears his throat again, his voice growing slightly more formal, more deliberate. Planning a wedding, he says, his voice clear and strong, is a journey. A wonderful journey, but one that comes with challenges. There are so many details, so many costs. My mother nods sagely from her seat, a look of understanding on her face. Yes, weddings are expensive. It's a practical reality. Mark continues, his voice filled with emotion. Sarah and I, we wanted this day to be perfect, to celebrate our love with all the people who mean the most to us. But honestly, there were times we worried. He pauses, looking at Sarah, then back at the crowd. We worried about how we were going to make it all happen. The venue, the catering, the music, it all adds up. He smiles, a genuine, heartfelt smile. But then, he says, and his voice softens slightly, becoming incredibly earnest, an angel stepped in. Someone who believed in us, who wanted to see us have the wedding of our dreams, without compromise. My mother is still smiling, looking around the room, perhaps wondering who this angel is. Maybe a rich aunt? An unexpected inheritance? Her eyes briefly flick towards me again, a fleeting, dismissive glance, before moving on. She's clearly not expecting me to be the answer. Why would she? I'm the failure, remember? Mark's gaze is still fixed on me. He takes a breath, and the air seems to hold itself captive. This person, he says, his voice thick with emotion, did something incredibly generous, something that made all of this possible. They didn't want any fanfare, any recognition. They just wanted to help us start our lives together on the right foot. He pauses again, letting the words hang in the air. The room is silent now, every eye on him, waiting. My mother is leaning forward slightly, her smile fixed, a hint of impatience now in her expression. Get on with it, she seems to be thinking. Thank whoever it is, and then get back to talking about Sarah and the brilliant lawyer and their brilliant future. Mark turns slightly, his body orienting towards me, towards the back of the room where I stand, trying to disappear. He raises his glass. I wanted to take this moment, he says, his voice resonating with sincerity, to publicly thank the person who funded this entire wedding. Every detail, every vendor, everything you see around you was made possible by her incredible kindness and generosity. He looks directly at me. His smile is wide, warm, full of gratitude and respect. "Thank you," he says, his voice clear and strong, carrying across the silent room. "Thank you, my name. Thank you for everything." The world stops spinning. The air leaves the room. Time dilates, stretching into an impossibly long moment. My mother's smile freezes. It doesn't just falter. It solidifies on her face like concrete, but a kind of concrete that is cracking and crumbling from within. Her eyes, moments ago shining with smug satisfaction, widen in disbelief. They dart from Mark to me, then back to Mark, searching for a hint of a joke, a misunderstanding, anything but the impossible truth. Silence descends thick and absolute. The gentle hum of conversation is gone. The clinking of glasses has ceased. Every single person in the room is looking at me, and then at my mother, their expressions ranging from shock to confusion to dawning comprehension. They are witnessing a public dismantling, a sudden, unexpected shift in the narrative they thought they understood. My sister's head snaps towards me, her eyes wide, her mouth slightly open. She looks genuinely surprised. She didn't know either. I insisted on that. I told Mark and Sarah I would help, but that it was a gift, no strings attached, no need to tell anyone, especially not my mother. I didn't do it for the recognition. I did it because I love my sister, and I wanted her to have the wedding she dreamed of, free from financial stress. I did it because I could. And I did it, maybe just a little bit, for the quiet satisfaction of knowing I could do something so substantial, something that required real success, even if no one else knew. But Mark knew, and in that moment, seeing my mother's frozen, shattered expression, I realized he understood exactly what he was doing. He wasn't just thanking me, he was correcting a narrative. He was standing up for me, subtly but powerfully, in front of the person who has spent my life trying to diminish me. My mother's face is a mask of conflicting emotions, disbelief, confusion, anger, but most prominently, humiliation. Public, undeniable humiliation. The carefully constructed facade of the successful mother with a successful daughter, celebrating a wedding funded by her failure, has just imploded. Her eyes flick towards me again, and for the first time, I see something other than disappointment or judgment. I see fear. Fear that her secret is out. Fear that her narrative is crumbling. Fear that the person she labeled a failure has quietly achieved a level of success she couldn't comprehend, a success that has now been publicly validated in the most undeniable way. The silence stretches, thick and heavy. I feel a strange mix of emotions myself. There's the initial shock, the adrenaline rush of the unexpected public acknowledgement. There's a flicker of cold satisfaction, seeing her smugness wiped away, her carefully crafted image cracking. But beneath that, there's also a deep sadness. This wasn't how I wanted it to happen. I didn't want this kind of confrontation, this public spectacle. I just wanted to be left alone, to exist without her constant criticism. And the fact that this moment, this supposed vindication, comes at the cost of potentially shattering the fragile peace of my sister's celebration is a heavy price. But it's done now. The words are out. The truth, or a significant part of it, is revealed. I didn't orchestrate this. Mark did. But standing here, feeling the weight of the room's gaze, seeing my mother's face, I feel a sense of power I haven't felt before in her presence. The power of having something she doesn't know about, something valuable, something she dismissed, something that has now become undeniable proof of her misjudgment. I manage a small nod towards Mark, a silent acknowledgement. He smiles back, a look of understanding passing between us. He knew. He saw the dynamic, or at least parts of it. And he chose this moment to rewrite the script. The silence begins to break, slowly at first, then a murmur ripples through the crowd. People are whispering, looking at me, then at my mother. I can't hear what they're saying, but I can imagine. The shock. The surprise. The realization that the failure daughter wasn't a failure at all. My mother stands up abruptly, knocking her chair slightly. The sound is loud in the still murmuring room. She looks pale, her eyes darting around wildly, like a cornered animal. She opens her mouth, as if to speak, but no sound comes out. Her carefully constructed composure has completely deserted her. Sarah stands up too, looking between her fiancé, her mother, and me. She looks confused, perhaps a little upset that this private information has been made public, but mostly just bewildered by her mother's reaction. Mark steps down from the stage area and walks towards me. He reaches me and gently takes my hand. "Seriously, my name," he says, his voice lower now, "meant just for me. Thank you. You saved us." I look at him, and I see genuine sincerity, not just gratitude for the money, but gratitude for the gesture, for the belief, for the quiet support. "You're welcome, Mark," I say, my voice steady now. The tremor is gone. "I'm happy for you and Sarah." He squeezes my hand before releasing it. My mother is still standing, frozen in place, the center of a silent, awkward storm. She looks lost, her usual sharp confidence evaporated. Her eyes meet mine across the distance, and for the first time in my life, she doesn't look down on me. She looks defeated. The moment stretches, suspended in time. The narrative has shifted. The roles have been reversed. She came here tonight to celebrate her triumph, a daughter who met her standards. And in doing so, she chose to publicly reiterate my perceived failure. But her celebration was built on an incomplete truth, a willful ignorance of my reality. And that ignorance, exposed in the most public way possible, has blindsided her. The rest of the evening is a blur. People approach me, some with genuine curiosity, others with thinly veiled awe. "We had no idea," they say. "That was so incredibly generous of you," I answer politely, deflecting praise, trying to steer the conversation back to Sarah and Mark. My mother retreats, finding a quiet corner, talking in hushed, tense tones on her phone. She doesn't approach me. She doesn't look at me again for the rest of the night. The ice queen has melted, or perhaps shattered. My sister comes over later, after the cake cutting. She hugs me tight. "You paid for all this?" she whispers, her voice full of wonder. "Why didn't you say anything?" "It was a gift," I say, hugging her back. "For you. I wanted you to have this." She pulls back, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, my name. Thank you so much. It means the world." Her gratitude feels real, uncomplicated by the dynamics that have always existed between me and our mother. And in that moment, surrounded by the lingering scent of buttercream and champagne, watching my sister smile through tears, the sting of my mother's words finally begins to fade, just a little. Leaving the party feels like stepping out of a different dimension. The night air is cool and clean after the stuffy, emotionally charged atmosphere inside. I walk to my car, the silence a welcome change from the buzzing tension I'd left behind. The victory feels hollow in a way. Satisfying, yes, to see the shock on her face, to finally shatter the narrative she held onto so fiercely. But it doesn't heal the wounds of a lifetime of feeling less than. It doesn't magically erase the years of criticism, the subtle and not-so-subtle barbs. Maybe that's the dry humor in it. You spend your life craving a mother's approval, fighting against her perception of you, and when you finally have undeniable proof that she was wrong, that you are capable, successful, even generous to a fault, the moment of vindication is sparked by someone else, delivered publicly, and feels more like a quiet, weary end to a long battle than a triumphant victory lap. I drive home under the indifferent stars, the city lights blurring past. My mind replays the scene, Mark's clear voice, my mother's frozen face, the sudden silence, the slow, dawning realization in the room. The failure funded the dream. The quiet one held the purse strings. The dismissed daughter was the linchpin. It's a beautiful, terrible irony. What happens next? I don't know. The phone calls will come. From my mother, probably, when she's composed herself, when she's formulated a new strategy, maybe an attempt to spin this, to claim she knew all along, that she was just testing me, pushing me to succeed. Or maybe she won't call. Maybe the humiliation is too deep. My sister will call. She'll want to understand, to talk about the awkwardness, to navigate the fallout with our mother. Our relationship, which has always been strained by the comparison she never asked for, might shift. Maybe for the better. Maybe she'll see me differently, not just as the sister who didn't quite measure up, but as the one who quietly supported her dreams. And me? I go back to my life. The life she calls a whim, a precarious existence. Except I know the truth. My business isn't a whim, it's a thriving enterprise. My life isn't precarious, it's built on a solid foundation I laid myself, brick by painstaking brick. I may not have the conventional markers of success she values, the husband, the picket fence, the pre-approved career, but I have something she doesn't. Independence, self-reliance, and a quiet, unshakable confidence in my own capabilities. The label of failure she tried so hard to brand me with? It doesn't fit anymore. Maybe it never did. Maybe it was always a reflection of her limitations, her fears, her inability to see beyond her own narrow definition of a successful life. Tonight, that label was publicly peeled away, not by my hand, but by the simple, honest gratitude of a good man who saw generosity where others saw only inadequacy. And while the moment itself was sharp, tense, and undeniably dramatic, the aftermath is quiet. A quiet reclaiming of my own story. If you've ever felt like someone else's narrative about you is holding you back, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these stories to life.